So we're now at the point at the end of the whole conference where it's sort of not really a wrap up yet. We're going to do some reflections here, but I would like to introduce to you Ellen Heinz from the Economic Development Administration. She is the Economic Development Representative to Ohio, and we hope that she's going to share with everyone the many of the exciting programs at EDA, and a lot of, what you've heard today are folks who already have touched EDA at some point. But this conference is also meant to be a resource to other folks who have yet to engage with programs at both JobsOhio and EDA. And so this is an opportunity to hear about some of that programming and, to have all of us be resources for you, everyone who you've heard speak and talk and moderate, and all of the organizations and entities involved here. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ellen to share with all of you.
Thank you so much, Molly. And thank you, JobsOhio and Cleveland State, Irina, and everybody who's been a part of putting this together. I think it's been an outstanding conference, lots of great information. And as an Ohio resident for the last 21 years, I was really excited to hear a lot more on some of these programs and the wonderful things going on. So as Molly mentioned, I'm the Economic Development Representative for Ohio. And I'm going to get into that just a little bit more. I really have a very brief side presentation because of the diversity of participants in the session today. As Molly mentioned, some people are very experienced with EDA or knowledgeable about our programs, and some people might not be. So as far as my background, I've spent the last 27 years split almost equally into thirds between education and workforce development, economic development at the local level, and also in manufacturing within automotive and food processing. I've helped start up a couple of new facilities and really value all the different things that I've done. And a quick shout out to everybody on the call, but Colleen, I just saw you. I've also been part of the Ohio Economic Development Association for many years, and I've been on the board for probably the majority of the last 10 years. So with that being said, I'm going to go into my PowerPoint. So let me just share my screen. And Molly, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah. As Susan mentioned at the kickoff of the Innovation Summit, here's our mission. I'm going to go over a little bit about our region, my role, and then a little bit more about some of the programs that we currently have available. Our mission is to lead the federal economic development agenda by promoting innovation and competitiveness, preparing American regions for growth and success in the worldwide economy. We're part of the Chicago region, and it includes Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Minnesota, Ohio, and Wisconsin, that area in light green that you see. And really the heart of the Midwest. We've got a lot of great partnerships with the states that are involved here. So many of you have been involved possibly in developing a regional SEDS, and you hear EDA say a lot, we want to see projects that have a regional impact. Well, you can see that that's the whole nature of our program. As your economic development representative for the state, my role is to be close to the community, to have expertise not only in our programs, our regional programs. There are programs at the national level, which those competitions are handled almost exclusively through headquarters, but at least be able to connect you to technical assistance, and then of course fully to the public works, economic adjustment assistance, and our local technical assistance programs. Once an application is developed, a lot of times applicants will reach out. We can help them determine if they're an eligible applicant, if the project is eligible, and would it be competitive. And then what we'll do is if they do decide to submit an application, I'll do a technical review with them before formal submittal. Once it's formally submitted, that information is in, and we'll go to our investment review committee if everything's in place. And I do pitch the projects for Ohio, although I don't vote on them. Hopefully most of you are familiar with our investment priorities. equity being our top priority, we're also targeting recovery and resiliency, technology-based economic development, environmentally sustainable development, workforce development, manufacturing, and exports and foreign direct investment. As equity, I mentioned, is our top priority. We're looking at one or more traditionally underserved populations and underserved communities, also with geographies that have been systematically or systemically denied a full opportunity to participate and grow. So, of course, we've had pre-CARES Act, right, with EDA, and then everything and all the programs and funding of our regular program funds before the CARES Act. Then we had a lot more money with CARES Act, and then a lot more additional money with ARPA. And now for this next fiscal year allocation, which will be live October 1, most of our funds are currently already expended for ARPA as well as our previous program funds. We're starting to get applications in, and we'll be reviewing those within the next couple of months, getting ready to award some projects, hopefully, or at least recommend them for further consideration as soon as we get our next year's allocation. We don't know, we might be able to get some additional funds in addition to our regular program amounts. That is still to be determined. But these are the major three categories. We've got public works assistance, which we're looking at construction of economic development, infrastructure, facilities, possibly roadway projects into industrial parks, and then economic adjustment assistance for regular programs. We've got a little bit more flexibility here to respond to similar types of projects. We're looking at water lines, sewer lines, wastewater treatment plants, as I mentioned, roadway, anything that really has a strong tie to economic impact, industry, higher paying, higher wage jobs. Don't do a lot within the residential, nothing within the residential arena, very little within the retail arena. But again, we are really looking at those higher paying, higher wage types of jobs and projects that could not happen without EDA's assistance. And both of those programs, all of our programs are on a rolling review process, which essentially means you can apply, and as long as there's funding available, you'd have an opportunity at some of those funds. Also, we do have assistance to coal communities, nuclear closure communities, and disaster recovery, and we have partnered with FEMA in many situations to help communities recover from major disasters. We also like to do planning assistance, short-term planning and funding studies, partnership planning, as well as local technical assistance programs, industry cluster strategies, implementation of targeted strategies, sometimes a recovery coordinator. So these are programs I really didn't know much about before I was at EDA. I've been with the agency almost 2 years now, and are truly a great resource out there for communities that are looking for this. One of the things to mention, I forgot to mention earlier on, is that our state of Ohio has been kind of in a unique position. About 1/3 of the state, pretty much the right-hand side of the state, has only been covered by 5 economic development districts. Most states have a much more comprehensive of economic development districts, and those are our partners that we provide partial funding to help implement some EDA projects, to help really collect data and support the communities within their area. So EDA is part of my focus is really to develop that pipeline of projects, and also to help develop more regional SEDs, which 5 regional SEDs were funded within the last 18 months. I believe Columbus, the Cleveland area, Toledo area, Maumee Valley, and also the Dayton region all received funding for regional SEDs through EDA, which is awesome. I'm going to get into that a little bit further and how that plays into the next round of funding for us. But again, looking at other partners to potentially have a much more comprehensive coverage of economic development districts within the state. Oh, so sorry, back to this slide. So I've talked a little bit about the non-construction projects being the studies and the local technical assistance. In regards to construction projects, it's really important for EDA. Our notice of funding opportunities specifically outline what will and will not qualify for funding. design, bid, build is really our preferred construction methodology. Some of the other types of construction just don't seem to pair well with our funding source. But if you have any potential projects you're interested, I'm happy to go over that with you. Projects really need for EDA to be complete when they come in. We did have some applicants that were declined for further consideration with CARES or ARPA reapply, and some of them did get funded within the last year. So there is an opportunity to apply a second time, but you're really much better off if you could take the time to make sure you have a fully complete application. In regards to match with CARES and with ARPA, it was an 80-20. You could ask for 80%, up to 80% assistance with EDA, and even try to make the case for more. It was so highly sought after funds. I think nationally right now, we don't have all the specific numbers run regionally, but said probably 4 times more applications than we had funding for the project. So with this next fiscal year allocation, the money I mentioned that would be live October 1, we're looking at probably a 50-50 match unless you could claim extreme distress for the project. And then the why. The why is very important with EDA. What's the economic justification for the project? So when ARPA was announced, I remember getting a lot of requests by communities saying they had a failing water line, they had a lot of other issues, but some of the initial interests were for projects for residential nature. They weren't going to be able to help businesses stay or help businesses grow and expand. So for example, if it's a water line that will help 3 or 4 businesses in an industrial park not only stay, but to help grow their business. Let's say one's a baking company and that water line will help increase their capacity. Those are types of projects we like to see. One beneficiary, even if it's the town only has one major employer, one private sector employer, those are harder projects for us to do, but certainly if it's an extremely distressed community and that's the only employer there, I would still recommend reaching out, but we'd really like to see multiple beneficiaries. So that ED 900B form that you see on the screen, or just the name of it, it's probably the simplest form I've ever seen, even when I was in the private sector. So in regards to signing off, it's just something simple we have businesses do that says, hey, if EDA funds this project and the project goes through, maybe we'll add 10 jobs, 50 jobs, 100 jobs, and why this project's important to them. It's very non-invasive because the company is not the applicant, it would be the community. And then also any kind of data that you could show what that impact would be. And sometimes it's for comparable. Let's say if you're developing a new community-owned industrial park, you could compare it to other similar types of industrial parks and, what the potential economic impact would be. And then, of course, we also accept letters of private support from businesses, but the ED 900Bs are really the most beneficial. I think we had one project that was not funded in CARES, said they couldn't get any businesses to sign off, but never really went in to ask them. And then the second time around, actually did and maybe brought in 14 of these ED 900Bs, which is, it's pretty much you can't make your project more competitive than doing something like that. So, and here are the 3 major things that we look at for projects. And we look at, is it an eligible applicant? Is it a state, county, city, tribal, local government, or special purpose unit? Is it an institution of higher education? Are they a nonprofit organization or association? If it is a nonprofit, you do need to have a letter of support from your local unit of government, but those are the type of applicants. So let's say, I think Colleen mentioned a project, if the community owns the land or the university owns the land, you have to have site control, or they own the building that they want to renovate for a new workforce and manufacturing center. Those are the types of projects we could do. Buildings that are owned by a private business, or the land is owned by a private business, you have to demonstrate that would go into the hands of a public partner. Otherwise, those are projects that we can't do. And then is the area eligible? So the unique thing with CARES and ARPA is due to the pandemic, that's considered a national and natural disaster. So every community was eligible to apply for EDA funds. Now for our next fiscal year allocation money, we are very likely going back just to our pre-COVID-19 requirements for eligibility. You have to have a high unemployment for the last 24 months. The unemployment rate has to be 1% or greater than the national average, or your community has to have a low per capita income, less than 80% of the national average, or there's a special need. Maybe you're near a nuclear power plant that is slated to close or have a major layoff, or maybe you're near a closed coal mine, a coal-fired power plant, or there's been a natural disaster in your community. I know some counties, it's really tough. They might appear to be more affluent when you pull the countywide data, but there might be very distressed census tracts within that county and within some municipalities in that county. So that is information that we can look at. Certainly, if you've got WARN notices or other items to make the case, really the more distress that you can identify in the community, that really helps the competitiveness of the project. And then is the project consistent with a regional strategy or comprehensive economic development strategy, a CEDS? So EDA is hosting National CEDS Week to promote CEDS. Our organization is 100% founded with the concept that if you're going to do your project, it has to be in a plan. Everything has to be in a plan. And it doesn't have to be a 150-page study, but it has to be part of the community's economic vision. And so with CARES and ARPA, we were allowing CEDS alternatives, something that might be, maybe it was a citywide CEDS that was completed, maybe it was a countywide CEDS, and maybe it's something that was loosely based off of, maybe it was a workforce development strategic plan. But again, moving forward October 1st, from everything that we're hearing, it's going to have to be a strict alignment with the CEDS, either something that EDA funded, or you can go to our website and look at the criteria that we require for any type of CEDS project. And your community CEDS is going to need to meet that. And again, that's something I'm happy to go over with applicants that are interested in EDA funding. And then the CEDS, the project also has to be in alignment with your CEDS priorities, which for the most part, I don't think in the last year and a half, I've seen any major community projects that weren't in alignment with their CEDS. And then just a couple of items in closing. What makes, if you've got those three components, 1A, B, and C, what else is going to make your application competitive? Having a confirmed match. Cash is always a very strong match source. We'd like to see blended match sources, but some of them, whenever there's another component, maybe there's ODOT comes in as a match for part of the grant, we need to have the agreement for their grant and make sure that they're in alignment and there's nothing in there that would conflict with our standard terms and conditions of our dollars. The project has to be in place for 20 years. So that's a challenge, but again, it is great to see other match sources because that states that the project has a lot of support. We don't allow in-kind match for construction projects, but it is something we'll consider for non-construction. We need to have geographic distribution of our funds. So even if it's the world's greatest project and we only have a few $1 million next year out of regular program funds, it can't all go just to one part of the state. It has to be diversified as much as possible. And then economic distress, as I mentioned, return on investment. We don't have a specific required jobs retained, created, or investment added. But those are things we do take into account. One of the best things I love about EDA is somebody who worked for a local economic development group in a rural community is that we look at the impact that those jobs will have on the community. So, we'll look at projects in big communities and small communities. It doesn't matter, but we really take a look at what that impact is going to be on the community. And then is there regional support of the project? And again, does it meet our investment priorities? A couple of things we can't do. We cannot do any awards to for-profit organizations. We can't grant awards to infrastructure owned by a for-profit organization. I was approached about a great project in Southeast Ohio, but with several hundred acres of land that were available. But unfortunately, it was all owned by one private owner who was not interested in selling it to a community. And again, that really looks too much like a set aside. Obviously, if we helped put in infrastructure, maybe the the price per acre would go up from $10,000 to $20,000 per acre. And then that would go obviously into the hands of the developer. Even if there's an arrangement made, it's just a no-go for us. So we're really looking at industrial parks or land, obviously, that you have to have site control. We'd probably look at a project within an industrial park where there's several businesses in there. Maybe not all the land, obviously, anymore is owned by the community, but that's something that we could potentially look at. And then no infrastructure on land that's acquired through eminent domain, and no grant awards to nonprofits to be used for equity stakes. So this slide obviously just depicts some of the ARPA programs, the Build Back Better, it's well underway, Good Jobs Challenge, and then of course more money to the economic adjustments, assistance, indigenous communities, travel, tourism, and outdoor recreation are closed, and then the statewide planning, research, and network grant. So those were just a highlight of some of the dollars from ARPA that were funded, or some of the dollars in the programs that were funded by ARPA resources. And then here are some additional helpful resources. On EDA.gov, you'll find the notice of funding opportunities for all of our specific programs. You'll also have information to SEDS, libraries and videos, and a list of our economic development districts and partners, application materials. I'd also highly recommend for anybody who's on the call today, if you're not currently on our distribution list, to sign up for that. That's something when I was in local economic development, I was not signed up for. And if you're signed up for that, you can choose what part and what press announcements you'll see, but you can see what other projects are getting funded across the United States. It really gives you a great idea of some different projects that are going on. Stats America is a wonderful resource to determine if your project meets that per capita income and unemployment eligibility. And also just our notice of funding opportunity has more information on projects. We're really looking for transformational projects, not looking for the transactional ones. Really want to see where there's going to be that long-term value and transform the local economy. And that's all I have. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ellen. If anyone has any questions at this time for Ellen and the programs that she can talk about, please go ahead and ask. Otherwise, I am going to turn it over to our other partner and supporter here, Matt Waldo from JobsOhio. Matt?
Just wanted to start the wrap-up process from the state of Ohio's perspective, from JobsOhio's perspective, by thanking all the wonderful panelists and moderators that have taken their time not only to present, obviously, but to prepare for this important event. And, you know, there are other people that are worth mentioning here, that are important to mention here, that worked behind the scenes on the event as well. And those are Haley Bach, Matthew Ellerbrock, Tyler Alchin, and Kevin Chambers from JobsOhio. Excuse me. And of course, Susan Brem and Ellen Heinz have both been behind the scenes and in front of the camera, as well as the wonderful staff from Cleveland State's College of Education and Urban Affairs. You know, I think a couple of reflections here before I kind of talk over the slide that you see here in front of you. One is that, you know, what kind of resonated with me from, you know, the high level down on the presentation so far. You know, Nick Singali talked about this concept of Society 5.0, and that institutions need to adjust to that reality. And that collaborations will be key across those institutions that are working to get us there. Additionally, you know, I think some key themes that resonated with me throughout the event, both yesterday and today, had to do with, and I think Chris Berry from the Ohio Innovation Exchange today summarized this really well in kind of crisp bullet points when he said that moving the ball on innovation for our state is underpinned by good information, like we saw with the exchange that he leads. And of course, supported by Cleveland State, but that the key components, the building blocks of an innovation ecosystem are, access to world-class talent, substantial and timely capital allocation, and, some intensity of research and development, both in the private sector and supported by public institutions. And, that there are some gaps in each of these areas, frankly, both nationally and in Ohio. But, as they say, the first step to resolution is putting your finger on the challenge. And so I think it's important that we've begun to do that in this event, but also to create a platform for current and future collaboration among a lot of these key institutions that Nick mentioned in his 5.0 discussion. I think that the reason why I wanted to put up this slide here to kind of wrap things up is twofold. One is it kind of ends where we began the discussion with the JobsOhio 3-pillar strategy at the beginning when Andrew Dye introduced himself and the other speakers that lead those verticals from JobsOhio yesterday. And so you can see here, that those pillars that we mentioned in that session are, really the very ones that Chris Berry touched on in his talk from Ohio Innovation Exchange. And so, if you look at what JobsOhio has implemented since 2019, we've developed a robust talent services program that serves it's one of the few in the country, frankly, that is truly turnkey. And you can read more about all these initiatives, by the way, on our website. And that's why I've added those to Andrew's slide from yesterday. There's links on our site to get more information. But, then, moving to sites here on the right-hand side of the slide, we have what we call our OSIP program, which is the Ohio Site Inventory Program. We've authenticated through a third-party consultant more than 25 large sites that are truly shovel-ready. That's sort of the lingo that various states use. But, this means utilities in place. All environmental issues are cleared through the appropriate channels, and, other community readiness factors on an infrastructure level. And we have plans to do more there in each of those buckets. And then, of course, we talked in greater detail about this third area of innovation programs yesterday, and we went into each of the 3 pillars, maybe not at deep depth, but certainly deeper than this. But again, I wanted to point out that folks can find more information on our website here. That link is just here at the top of the page if you want to read more about each of those innovation programs and how they work together, and some of the eligibility standards for each one. So then, I think what is helpful that Andrew voiced over yesterday when he presented the slide, but that I've put here, as kind of a call to action, and a little bit more specificity at the bottom of the slide here. The instruction that Andrew helpfully provided yesterday was that the right way to engage with JobsOhio to begin the conversation about how to enter the consideration process for each of these new programs that we implemented as part of our new strategic plan in 2019 is to interact with the sector vertical, the 10 sector vertical leaders, which you can find that information through that link there at the bottom of the slide that I'm showing here. And I want to give a shout out here before we wrap up. Ellen, it was great to see you. Ellen and I go back some time. We were in the inaugural OEDA certification class in 2018, Economic Development Certification class. Ethan and I worked shoulder to shoulder with Andrew Dye and Kevin Chambers and others on developing a strategic plan to respond to the pandemic through advanced manufacturing initiatives to quickly ramp up development of capabilities on personal protective equipment to help get those developed in the state and vetted in the states, creating new jobs along the way. Of course, Russ Mills and Jason Jolly, who are in the session that I moderated yesterday, with whom I collaborated on multiple occasions to develop a curriculum for OEDA activities. So great to see everyone. And again, thank you to EDA, to Cleveland State University, to all of our panelists, and others who worked on this event. I'll hand it back to you, Molly. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Hi, Ellen. I see you'd like to jump in here and say something. Go right
Sure.
ahead.
Yep. Shout out to Matt as well. I'm so glad I got my economic development certification. It's been such a pleasure knowing you. I actually had a couple of things I forgot to mention. I want to thank not only Cleveland State, but our university partners in Ohio, along with our economic development districts. They do a really heavy lift in helping reach some of those communities that don't have all the resources that they need. And I want to say, again, especially thank you to everybody putting together the event, but JobsOhio for your support of this and also the other projects. I mentioned match. When we see JobsOhio match on projects, it's pretty much gold, and it's great to see. And I'm so thankful for that and all they've been doing with their investment in Ohio and really some innovative programs. So thank you.
Thanks, Ellen. So that we're at the end of our time here, but I would like to say, as a EDA University Center, as an applied research center within a public university, much of the work we do isn't possible without community partners, without engaging with community. And it's not just their support, but their genuine engagement with the university. So we're grateful to our partners and supporters from EDA and JobsOhio for seeing the value in this conference and supporting this work. And Matt, to the JobsOhio team for your collaboration and your thoughtful consideration of what relevant topics and issues we needed to include in this discussion. For everyone else out there, we hope that you not only find these last 2 days informational and interesting, but really useful and relevant to the work that you do and the work that you do in the communities across Ohio to support and drive innovation. So we'd also like to thank all of our speakers, presenters, guests for spending the last 2 days with us. We're going to be following up with everybody about this conference. So as a last reminder, you've heard this several times throughout the last 2 days, we'll be sending out a survey to all participants to get your feedback on what are the leading issues you're facing relevant to innovation in Ohio, topics and areas that we should be considering also for not just future work, but for next year's conference. So we really strongly encourage you to fill out that survey. The information you share with us is very important to us and how we'll go forward in this next year. The conference is being video recorded, as you've seen throughout the last 2 days. We will be sharing these recordings in a number of different locations and formats. We'll be sending out emails and links, but you'll be able to find all of the resources that were presented here over the last 2 days on our SIPO website, which is on the homepage right now of the College of Education and Public Affairs here at Cleveland State University. And again, thank you for spending your last 2 days with us. I hope that you enjoy the remainder of your day. Thank you, everyone.